how to get out of a cheap dopamine rut and start enjoying effort for its own sake. This is a great one and as relevant as it gets nowadays. So the first step, I would say, is to embrace, or at the very least accept, the fact that it's going to be a long journey, depending on how long you've been going down that cheap dopamine spiral. It's going to be probably a long journey. It's going to be an exhausting journey at the beginning, but there is light at the end of the tunnel. You are most likely going to be even less productive for the first couple of weeks. When you start introducing healthier habits and healthier ways of engaging with the world and engaging with your daily routine, even though you are changing for the better, expect to be even less productive for the first couple of weeks. Or to expand it, what you can expect is to have lower energy, lower mood, and to be less productive first couple of weeks. So that's the most difficult part. The first couple of weeks are extremely discouraging. That's a real test for people. Worse mood, lower energy, and less productive. It is tempting. It is tempting because you can fall into the line of thinking, or down the spiral of thinking, that there is no fixing. You're trying to get better. You are using your phone less. You are living a more structured life, but again, low energy, low mood, less productive. So maybe there's no help. So let me get back to my old ways. Let me go back into the cheap dopamine spiral. But it's a test. It's a test that can be passed only with patience and nothing else. Patience and persistence. It's completely natural to struggle for those first couple of weeks. Your mind has been conditioned and used to being constantly stimulated. So it doesn't matter if you are able somehow to adopt the healthiest habits on the first day and to reorganize your life and to implement a great structure in your life, you're going to suffer. You're going to suffer because you're not used to it and you've been conditioned to experience your day with massive amount of stimulation. So forget about being at your most productive. Forget about that spike in energy, spike in mood, spike in productivity. That is going to come later on. And maybe you're not even going to experience it as a spike. Probably it's going to be gradual, and then one day you're going to turn around and think, wow, my life has completely changed. So patience is the name of the game. Patience, persistence. Another thing, grace. Giving yourself grace and giving yourself compassion. Why? Because this is not a you problem. This is not a unique problem that has something to do with you being messed up or broken in some way. Struggling with not being able to engage in effort, and struggling with attention, and struggling with the fact that you are in this cheap dopamine spiral, it's the most common and the most relevant challenge of the modern individual. So you have to give yourself grace, because if you're going to be ashamed of this problem, it means that you're ashamed of being human in the digital age. Why should you be ashamed of being human? There's nothing to be ashamed of. So you have to give yourself from day one all the way through grace and compassion. That's not the same as giving yourself excuses. I'm not saying give up every day and restart your journey every day. That's not self-compassion. That's not grace. That's being, to be honest, immature. That's being childish. And that's being a bit of a coward. Self-compassion and grace is about accepting that it's going to be a rough ride, accepting that it's going to be accepting that there are going to be a lot of temptations, accepting that you're not going to be perfect, and acknowledging that this is not a problem that's uniquely your problem. It's a problem of all humans existing and living in the modern age. I've spoke with people. I shouldn't be name dropping here, especially when it's this type of topic. I've spoken with people who are extremely successful in the material external sense, who have achieved a lot. I've spoken with people that you've watched on YouTube that have audience that counts in millions. And I've spoken with those people, and those people also struggle with their phone usage. Those people struggle with falling into the cycle of cheap dopamine. Everyone struggles with it. It's just to a different extent. And different people have different resources of support when it comes to those things. But we all struggle with it to some extent. So no shame. Self-compassion and grace, this is part of the human experience in the digital age. So as we said, first, acknowledge is going to be probably long and definitely rough at the beginning. Acknowledge, accept, and embrace that you're going to see a drop in energy, mood, and productivity. And the increase and upward movement comes only later, after the first couple of weeks. Infinite self-compassion and grace. And now we can move on. Now we can move on to something more practical. Now is the time to discuss some actionable steps. First one would be something that I always recommend to people when I'm working with them, to do an attention inventory. So you're going to set at minimum five alarms throughout different times of the day. Maybe you can set an alarm for every waking hour of the day, depending on how your schedule is. Maybe your profession is not allowing you to have an alarm set during your working hours. Maybe because you are actually able to get into the flow state, you don't want to have an alarm go off during the hours of work or during the hours of creative pursuit. But either way, you're going to set at minimum 5 alarms, at most one alarm for every waking hour of the day. And every time the alarm goes off, you're going to pause and you're going to write in your phone, in your notes, where was your attention at the moment the alarm went off? Did you direct your attention there, or was it captured and directed there by someone or something else? Those are, two basic questions. If you want to engage in further journaling, you can journal on what was your inner experience in the moment of having your attention directed there. You can write about, was there a particular emotion that made it easy for your attention to be captured, if you define or if you identify that your attention was captured. But for start, I would maybe focus on the first two questions. Where was your attention, and were you the one who directed it there? Because after a week of this type of journaling, you look back on it and you see, for example, that during some parts of the day, you are rarely the one directing your attention. Or maybe you notice that during leisure time, your attention is directed at a very specific inner conflict or a specific topic. Or you can recognize through this attention inventory, through this journaling, you can see what are the most quote-unquote dangerous activities or dangerous triggers for you. So attention inventory is an exercise that I would recommend to everyone. Spend at least 1 week keeping that attention journal, taking that attention inventory, and then at the end of the first week, you reflect back on it and you study. You try to collect as much relevant insight as you can from everything that you wrote down in that week. And you get a better understanding of where your attention is going, how often you are the one directing it, and what you can do to change it. The next thing would be to say that environmental design beats willpower on this journey. I mean, environmental design beats willpower in almost all cases, but especially on this journey of getting out of that cheap dopamine spiral. What does that mean? And it means that you should not be relying on your willpower as a finite source when environmental design is something that's available to you, which means organizing your environment so that it's more difficult for you to engage in certain cheap dopamine behaviors and make it more easy for you to stay away from them and more easy to engage in certain healthy behaviors. I always use the example of peanut butter. People who've been watching me or people who are part of my community or have worked with me or have attended some of my lectures, they know that I always use the peanut butter example. If I have a jar of peanut butter in my home, it's going to get eaten in less than 24 hours. Doesn't matter the size of that jar. It can literally be 1 kilogram. I don't know what's that in pounds. It can be 1 kilogram of peanut butter. It will get eaten in less than 24 hours. I'm not ashamed to admit it. It's my guilty pleasure. So why should I be engaging in spending my precious willpower on not eating peanut butter when I can just not have peanut butter in my home? That doesn't mean that I, as a human being, don't have the freedom to go and buy it. I can always do so. So it's not as if environmental design is completely relieving you of temptations. Unfortunately, some people are conditioned or have conditioned themselves so strongly to engage in certain behaviors that environmental design is helping them less than it does most people. But for the vast majority of you listening, environmental design that is setting up those barriers is going to help you. So, yes, even though part of environmental design in this case is me not having peanut butter in my home, it still means in a moment of weakness, I can, at 1 a.m. go and find a store that works and buy a jar of peanut butter and, binge eat it throughout the night. It is possible. But the effort needed to do so is too high, so most likely I will not do it. However, if I had it always in my pantry or in my fridge, it would be a constant battle and constant usage of willpower not to eat it. So why do it? Now, when it comes to cheap dopamine, it's not that you can not have your phone in your house because phone is the ultimate the ultimate enemy when it comes to cheap dopamine. So it's not as if you can just throw away your phone, but you can set certain barriers. You have app blockers and website blockers. You have those apps that are allowing you to block other apps and to block certain websites, and sometimes they allow you to completely block your entire phone from using in certain hours. I'm not affiliated with any of them, but I've been using Freedom app, Freedom as in FREEDOM, Freedom app for a while now. Again, no affiliation. Maybe I can get sponsored. If someone who has connections in Freedom app is watching this, please sponsor me. Let's make something happen. But I've been using it for a while. It's extremely helpful. It is a paid app. Maybe you can find some free alternatives. I'm pretty sure free alternatives exist. But the point is, even if you cannot afford it or if you cannot find a free alternative, don't despair. It's not necessary. It's just helpful. It just, I'm going to be honest, makes things easier. Because if I can completely block my access to internet on my phone for a couple of hours, it's definitely going to help me. But if you cannot do that, you can also buy that plastic safe that some people have at home. So you put the phone in the safe and you have a timer. So let's say you cannot unlock that safe for some amount of time. Now, are you going to be that type of person where you break into the safe? Is the temptation so strong for you? I'm hoping not. If it is, then it's just maybe a reminder of how seriously you need to take this journey of snapping out of pursuing cheap dopamine. So environmental design, to summarize it, if it wasn't clear by now, means designing that is organizing your environment, your surroundings, and your life in a way where it's more difficult to engage in that certain cheap dopamine behavior. So what is that? That's setting limits in the sense of moving away your phone into another room when you're working, giving your phone to your partner or your friends or your siblings or your roommates or your parents, whoever you live with, if you don't live alone, giving them your phone after a certain hour of the day and saying, I'm done with using my phone. Giving them your laptop, perhaps. What does it also include? Environmental design includes completely deleting certain apps. Environmental design includes blocking notifications on your phone. I mean, if you have notifications for social media, at this day and age, I don't know what you're doing. I don't know if you're aware what you're doing to your mind. So blocking, maybe that would be the most straightforward first step, blocking as many notifications, that is, blocking as many apps as possible from giving you notifications throughout the day. Are there apps that are extremely important for you. Maybe some messaging app where you expect your loved ones or a business partner or a colleague or a boss to contact you for urgent matters. Okay, if you really think you can expect emergency call or message, keep the keep the notifications open and enabled on that specific app. But other than that, block as many notifications as you can. And the ultimate, maybe this was supposed to be the first thing to mention, but maybe not. Maybe you need to kind of have this foundation that I explained, and then to say the ultimate thing, you have to start starting your day. Doesn't is not the best sounding sentence, but you get my point. You have to start your day with no screens and no stimulation and no receiving of no external stimulus other than what you can observe in nature or observe around you. Meaning, no podcast, no audiobook, so nothing educational also. No music, no podcast, no audiobook, no social media, no email, and no messages, and nothing for the first however many minutes of the day you can afford. Part of my morning is to strive to have first hour of the day to myself, for myself, without engaging in anything other than my own self-reflection and gratitude and different practices of, as we said before, self-regulation, things like that. But I'm aware that I'm in a privileged position where I can design a large portion of my day and of my life. But maybe you can wake up earlier and start with 15 minutes and then progress to 30 minutes of having your morning just to yourself without any stimulation. I know some parents will say, it's easy for me to say as a single person with no kids currently that to advise this, but parents cannot do so. Completely fair argument. Maybe you can wake up even earlier. I know certain writers who wake up before their kids and do 30 minutes or 60 minutes of writing. Maybe you can do 15 minutes of nothing or self-reflection and gratitude, and then maybe you can do 15 minutes of reading or writing. So kind of in theory, it is possible to wake up before others and have some selfish alone time to establish this practice of starting your day with no stimulation and becoming more and more resistant and less resistant to cheap dopamine and less attracted to cheap dopamine. It is possible in theory, under any circumstances, to start your day in silence with yourself, for yourself. If you're finding it extremely difficult, let's start with 5 minutes. But if you tell me that it's impossible for you, if you tell me that it's absolutely impossible for you to have any amount of alone time when you wake up, then you know that you're lying to yourself, you're lying to me, you know that you're giving yourself excuses. That's not self-compassion, that's not grace, that's, I have to say it how it is, that's cowardice. Cowardice in the sense of escaping the responsibility to help yourself, escaping the fact that you can, in fact, change certain parts of your life, escaping the fact that effort is needed to change. And if it means waking up when you don't want to wake up and waking up when you feel like you haven't gotten enough sleep, I would say, don't prioritize 7 hours of sleep. Prioritize waking up and having a morning of silence and no stimulation. And I know some biohackers and some supposedly health conscious people are going to argue this and say that sleep is more important. No, it isn't. No, it isn't, because the amount of sleep that you get isn't worth anything if once you wake up, you engage in stimulation right away. So that's it. Let's summarize everything that we said. Accept the journey will be long and that initially you will see a drop in energy, mood, and productivity. Give yourself grace and self-compassion. Start with the attention inventory. Engage in environmental design. Make it as difficult as possible to engage in overstimulating behavior, in cheap dopamine behavior, through blocking notifications, through moving your phone physically away from yourself throughout the most of the day, through making a contract with an accountability partner to take your phone away from you, through these app blockers or website blockers, and start your day at the very least for the first 15 minutes, and then work your way up to 30, 40, 60 minutes of silence and zero stimulation, meaning receiving no input, no music, no audiobook, no podcast, so nothing even, not even things that would seem healthy or productive or nourishing, not even those things. Zero stimulation, just you with yourself, reflecting, hopefully engaging in some gratitude practice, maybe doing some conscious breathing, maybe doing some light movement, but no stimulation. And that would be your way, your roadmap to snapping out of the cheap dopamine spiral. And as a byproduct of this effort, your capacity to put in effort increases drastically. Now, specific practices of developing the muscle of effort, maybe that's for another time, because it would make this into a full hour of answering one question. So maybe let's keep it like this. If you do these things to start breaking away from the cheap dopamine trap, then your capacity to put in effort and to enjoy effort for its own sake is going to, as a byproduct, increase drastically.